Hi, my name is Joe Bellick, and I'm the founder of Bellick Law, LLP. We are proud sponsors of the Mesothelioma Research Foundation. We have been honored to do this work for 25 years, representing people with mesothelioma and their families. And part of our commitment to our clients is to give back and sponsor research and advocacy efforts and engagement across the mesothelioma community.
Hi, I'm Trey Branham. Dean Omar Branham and Shirley is proud to sponsor this year's Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation Conference. The 34 lawyers at Dobbs have more than 400 collective years providing legal representation to victims of this insidious cancer. We applaud the leadership of MARF and this community for its tireless dedication to finding a cure for this totally preventable disease.
At MRHFM, we exclusively help mesothelioma patients and their families. It's all we do.
This is why we are proud to sponsor the Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation and its work to fund mesothelioma research and provide support services and education for patients and their families.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of MesoTV. Today we're discussing the eVOLVE Meso trial. To walk us through this, we have Dr. Lee Krug and Dr. Marjorie Zauderer, and I'm Julie White, I'm the Patient Services Director.
Dr. Krug is Vice President and Global Head of Bispecifics at AstraZeneca.
Dr. Zauderer is the Chief of Hematology and Oncology at Westchester Medical Health Network. Dr. Krug, you worked as a thoracic medical oncologist, I know previously. Could you tell us a bit about your experience with mesothelioma and how you came to be at AstraZeneca?
Yes, thank you, Julie, and thank you to the Meso Foundation for hosting this discussion about the eVOLVE Meso trial. It's really such a great opportunity, especially to do this with Dr. Zauderer, who I know so well. You're right, I'm a thoracic oncologist. I spent many years working at Memorial Sloan Kettering before moving into the pharmaceutical industry. While I was at MSK, I led the mesothelioma program. So in that capacity, I was taking care of a lot of patients and running clinical trials. And I was quite involved in the meso patient community during that time. I was also quite involved with the Meso Foundation and actually was chair of the board for a few years. When I left MSK, I handed the program over to my dear colleague Marjorie, and now look who's chair of the foundation. At any rate, I am now the global clinical head for the bispecific program at AstraZeneca. So in that role, my responsibility is to organize phase 3 clinical trials that are being run with new drugs. And in this particular case, we're running a phase 3 study with volrustomig in mesothelioma. And I'm really happy. It kind of brings me back to my roots working with patients and with mesothelioma at MSK, and now to be helping to lead a trial in that disease is really quite an honor. So thank you for the opportunity to speak about that trial today, and we'll hand it back over to you.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Zauderer, I know you have quite an impressive career as a thoracic medical oncologist and have treated mesothelioma patients for some time. Can you speak about your current position and also your involvement with this trial?
Sure. I just wanted to echo what Lee said and thank you and the organization and AstraZeneca for organizing to do this session of MesoTV. So I am a thoracic medical oncologist. I take care of patients with lung cancer and mesothelioma. I trained and worked for a long time at MSK, and Dr. Krug was my mentor. And my current role, in addition to my own practice in thoracic oncology, I oversee the whole group where we treat both blood cancers and solid tumors, as well as benign hematology. And I'm working really hard here at Westchester to help build up the clinical trial portfolio. And I have sort of two roles in this trial. One is that we're opening as a site to treat patients on this protocol. And I think that that's a great opportunity for people, particularly, it expands the geography of patients who can more easily access novel therapies. And I'm also involved in the International Steering Committee, which is a group of experienced mesothelioma physicians from around the world who help advise Dr. Krug and the rest of the team and AstraZeneca on what's happening with the trial, how to design it, how to help with enrollment, and then we'll ultimately participate in some of the data analysis that comes at the end.
Well, we're very lucky we have both of you here. So moving to the trial, the eVOLVE trial, this trial is using volrustomig, which is a bispecific antibody drug. Dr. Krug, could you explain the study drug, how it works, and what makes it different?
Yes. So we will be discussing a trial that uses a new drug called volrustomig, just as you said, which is a new type of immunotherapy. So many of the listeners will be familiar with immunotherapy treatment for cancer. It's used in many different cancers. It activates your own immune system to fight the cancer. And immunotherapy treatment is now a standard therapy for mesothelioma. It usually involves treatment with 2 antibodies. And as you'll see on the slide, there are 2 antibodies shown on the left side of the slide.
Right.
One is nivolumab and one is ipilimumab. Antibodies have this Y shape, and the target of the antibody is shown at the top of the Y shape. So in the case of nivolumab, the target is something called PD-1, and for ipilimumab, the target is CTLA-4. And then these drugs are given together to optimize the immune system to target the cancer. On the right side of the screen, you'll see the structure for volrustomig. And this has been engineered to target PD-1 on one side of the Y shape and CTLA-4 on the other. So both targets are treated with one antibody. And we believe that this may be more effective than giving 2 different antibodies. And we have tested this and shown this to be the fact in laboratory experiments. So with that, I will now hand it back over to you, Marjorie and Julie, and you can discuss the trial design that uses this new immunotherapy treatment.
That was helpful. Thank you. And the slide did help us visualizing that. And now we know a little about the drug. Let's talk about how it's being used in the eVOLVE study. I know this is a phase 3 study and it's a large study. It's a global study taking place in 21 countries. But just to back up for a minute and briefly explain for people who are listening who might not be familiar with clinical studies, as we know, drugs go through a rigorous process to be approved. In the process, there's 4 phases. The first and second phases are dose finding, safety, and efficacy for a certain cancer. These first phases are smaller groups, and phase 3, like this study, is a larger group and is comparing the study treatment against standard treatment, which is the standard approved treatment, to see which one would work better. And the last phase, phase 4, is a long-term safety after the drug has been approved, also post-marketing, it's sometimes called. This information helps us to understand that this study, as we would expect in a phase 3 trial, is a large study and is comparing treatments. Dr. Zauderer, can you please explain a few terms for us? I'll ask you one at a time. So first, randomization. How is this accomplished and is it fair?
Sure. So randomization is like a flip of a coin. And what happens is some basic information is taken from patients and a computer randomly decides which side you go on to. And while you'll, know what treatment you're getting, the people involved in the study, your doctor, AstraZeneca, anybody involved in the process doesn't control that. You just sort of put the information in and you get an answer back out.
Okay. And there's the word control arm. And what is the control arm of a study?
So the control arm of a study is the standard of care. So the current best treatment that we have available. And in this particular trial, that control arm is a choice by your doctor and you, whether you're getting chemotherapy or you're getting the standard immunotherapy that's available. And that would be something that you would discuss with the physician taking care of you.
And on the other side, what you hear the experimental arm or the treatment arm, and what would that be?
That would be getting chemotherapy with the new drug that's the bispecific, and you would get that together, and with the hope, but we don't know yet that that might be better than the standard arm. But the whole reason we do this and that we separate people and compare them is because we're all eager and excited and we have compelling early data we don't yet know till we do this bigger head-to-head comparison. But I do think it's important, sorry, just to add, even on the experimental arm, you're still getting a standard therapy. So your choices are really get a standard treatment or get a standard treatment plus something else. So, different studies are set up in different ways. But I think that this one is both arms are very reasonable, which is what we always want when we're designing these trials.
Sure. Makes sense. And another thing that a lot of patients ask or are concerned about is, will I be a guinea pig? Will I get placebos? Is there going to be a sugar pill? Or, will I be getting infused water or fake drug? So is there use of any placebo?
No placebo on this trial. So everyone is getting active treatment, active medications, and you know exactly what you're getting.
So there's no blinding. That's another term, I guess I didn't mention, but blinding is something that people hear, like a blinded study. What is a blinded study? Just to throw it out there so in case people wonder.
So blinding there's different types of blinding, but blinding is when some people, and it can be only some folks or it can be everyone, doesn't know what you're getting. And I think that that's, done in some situations, and in some situations because of how the medicines are given or that there isn't a placebo, it's much harder to maintain that. So when you're blinding, you have to give a placebo so that somebody doesn't know that the situation they're in is different or taking less time or more time or a different looking pill. So that, complicates a study sometimes in the design, but sometimes it's just not necessary. And so I think that's the situation we're dealing with here.
Yeah. So in this study, we don't need any of that. Everyone knows what they're getting, what arm they're on. There's no placebos, no blinding. Right. So looking at who's eligible for this study, I know this is a first-line study, meaning it's for patients who have not received prior treatment. I wanted to ask Dr. Zauderer, is this for pleural patients only, or are peritoneal and patients with mesothelioma in both cavities eligible?
It's a good question. This is a study for patients, just as you said, who haven't gotten other treatment, who aren't going to get surgery, and it's for folks who have disease in the pleural cavity. So if you have primary disease from some other site, you wouldn't be eligible.
Okay. Another question that is relevant that patients always will want to know is what's called the histology. So I know there's different histologies. Can you just speak to that and what types would be accepted?
Yeah, there's 3 histologies for mesothelioma: epithelioid, which is the most common, sarcomatoid, and then biphasic, which is just a combination of the two. And actually all types are eligible for participating in this trial, which is great because sometimes there are trials that exclude sarcomatoid or just for sarcomatoid, and this is for everyone. And the reason it's for everyone is because we have compelling data that these drugs may work in all different types of histologies, which just makes it even more exciting that this could be a great option for everybody.
Definitely. As someone who speaks to patients all the time and is looking for trials, there aren't a lot of trials for all histologies, so that's wonderful. I wondered, is there any major issues that would exclude a patient from the trial?
Great question. There's a whole laundry list of things and criteria you have to meet for a clinical trial. But the one I think that people may not be so aware of is because these are medications that help your own immune system mount a response to cancer, that there's a lot of concern for people who already have underlying issues with their immune system. So people who already have an autoimmune disorder that requires active treatment. are not going to
Makes
be
sense.
eligible, and this might not be safe. And it's, the question I get a lot is, well, I have some disease, and even if you treat my cancer, but my autoimmune disease gets worse, I'll take that chance on. And there's a case, I understand that impulse, but the challenge for us as, when we have our research hat on and we're trying to see if something's safe or not and effective, is that folks with those underlying issues tend to have more side effects from immune stimulating or immune, modifying medications like this. And so those people with those underlying types of disorders are generally excluded from a trial like this. And that's the case here.
Looking at side effects, I know the control arm side effects would be the same as if a patient was taking the standard of care. But can you tell us the general side effect profile, what that would be for the treatment arm with the volrustomig?
Sure. Volrustomig, like any immune checkpoint inhibitor, has the potential to have your immune system attack not just the cancer, but the cells that should be there in your body. So you can get that immune activity and inflammation reaction in your body. Any tissue or part of your body can happen in, but the places we see that most commonly can be the skin or the intestines, but it can also be your internal organs like your thyroid gland or your liver. And so one of the things that's emerging from some of the early data is that volrustomig may have slightly different places where you see this inflammation more or less than other things. So for example, when we compare it to CTLA-4 inhibitors, there's a little bit less colitis, but a little bit more toxicity in the liver. So, those are the things as a clinician that are always front of mind. But there's also a ton and a long list of potential side effects that it can happen or have happened to one person or multiple people along the way. And that's one of the things when you meet with your doctor or someone on the study team, they're going to go through with you in a lot of detail as part of the consent process and informing you all of the potential side effects and how likely they might be or might not be, so that when you get involved in something like this, you know exactly what's known today presently about the drug so that you're prepared for the potential risks associated with it.
Right. This sounds like an awesome opportunity to have access to a treatment that wouldn't otherwise be available to patients when they're first diagnosed. And as you said, you get the standard of care plus a bonus, an extra drug that has early data that's looking good. Dr. Zauderer or Dr. Krug, do either of you have anything you would like to say to patients who might be watching and might be hesitating about participating in a clinical trial like this or a trial?
I mean, I always tell people that, it's always a little bit scary to get something new and unknown. And every drug that we already have that's a standard, at some point there were those brave, bold people who did it, and at a time, even the medicines we use now 20 plus years ago didn't exist and people had to do that. And I think that if you can get comfortable with some of the risk and uncertainty, it's an amazing opportunity to potentially have early access to a drug that might, a few years from now, actually become the new standard. And it's definitely worth at least having a conversation with your doctor or a doctor that has the trial open to just consider it as an option and think it through that way and talk to you. I mean, I think that's, I send all my new patients to the foundation just to get sort of impartial advice and input from you and the medical team about, how to think through their decisions and to get expert opinions.
I agree with Marjorie that the opportunity to be involved in a clinical trial, I mean, I'll be honest, it's a big commitment, of course, but I think there are opportunities there. I think it's really important to speak to your doctor about it and to consider this treatment, especially when you're first deciding on what therapy to get. Patients in this trial cannot have had prior chemotherapy, so it's really important that you seek out this trial before you start on any kind of treatment. because otherwise this you wouldn't have the opportunity to participate in this trial. Patients who have had prior treatment with immunotherapy or chemotherapy are not eligible.
Well, I thank you both for your time, and anyone who is interested in the eVOLVE study Meso trial can contact me. There's links on the screen here, and just as both doctors said, just if you're interested, have a look. So thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
Julie.
Thank you.